Welcome to Whisking It All with your host, Angela Esposito, co-founder of WISC.ai, a food and beverage intelligence platform. We're going to be interviewing hospitality professionals around the world to really understand how they do what they do. Welcome back to Whisking It All. We're here today with David. I'm not even going to try to pronounce his last name, so I'm going to let him do it. David from MYR POS, MYR POS, also known as Master Your Rush point of sale system. David, the founder and CEO, thank you for being here today.
No, thank you. So last name is Nadezhdin. It has a Russian twist to it, so it's not always easy.
There you go. And now you know why I didn't even attempt to say it. Well, thanks for being here, buddy. It's good to see you.
Yeah, for sure, man. And it's funny how we went from different industries and all converged into like from knowledge of hospitality to actually working in it to tech in it, and not trying to change it up a little. So it's kind of interesting.
Yeah, it's super fun. So for those who don't know, maybe just to kick it off, can you just tell them a bit about what is, and how do you want me to refer to it? MYR, Master Your Rush?
MYR, everyone says MYR, and it's funny, but MYR in Russian actually means the world and peace, but which is not what's happening right now. But yeah, the idea is that, no, it's MYR, it's Master Your Rush. Originally it was like built as Peak, and then it had a name like Kumi, but now there's a reason why we went after the acronym MYR. So yeah, pretty much.
Awesome. So for those who don't know, obviously the point of sale space and the restaurant space is crowded, but what I think you've done really well is really found a specific niche. So maybe just to kick things off, tell them a bit about who or what kind of restaurants, MYR is for, and like what you guys do differently.
Well, it's funny, is about 14 years ago, so we're not 14 years old as a company, we're 5 years old, but 14 years ago, I used to have a development studio, and Anthony Benda, who people can look up, who owned Cafe Myriad, it was the first third wave coffee shop basically in Canada at the time. He's the number one barista in Canada, number 4 in the world, if you can believe that there are such competitions. And he was right next to Concordia University, downtown Montreal, so super busy all the time. And he contacted me and he said, look, I hear you make apps. And I said, sure. What do you want to, like, what is it you want to build? He goes, I want a POS. I didn't understand what POS was at the time in any way, shape, or form. But I said, but I heard of companies that, you hear about. And it was like Lightspeed Retailer or Square or Shopify. And his words were, they don't solve my problem in any way. So so that got my attention. I was like, okay, well, what do you mean? And he goes, I make 90% of my sales in a 2-hour window. And the difference between me being able to sell 200 coffees or 300 coffees is all about my way of being able to input an order, take an order, being able to kind of omni-channel it, if you will, and relay that information accurately and properly to different stations, drips, coffee station, barista station, all that. All in real time, and make it, lightweight. Anybody should be able to jump onto this interface, know how to use it, know how to punch it in, all that. And so I asked him, I said, well, so what is it that you want? He goes, well, I want what McDonald's has. I said, great, but that's not available for everyone. And he says, he goes, that's the point. He goes, it needs to be available for everyone. And so we started to build this point of sale that was just super accurately built and super specific to a workflow that was like, how do I intuitively input orders as quickly and efficiently as possible with the least touch points possible, relay that information to different stations and different pieces of information so that I could move the lineup as fast as possible. And so we ended up building that, and slowly but surely other coffee shops started calling us saying, hey, we really like what you built, but we like this feature, that feature. Then eventually that third wave coffee shop idea went off to food trucks and salad bars and taco shops. And now we're in this world where QSR is absolutely dominant. So we built a POS that was super specific into the workflow of what is QSR today, not compared to what is, let's say, a full service restaurant. A full service restaurant doesn't deal with volume. They have a rush, but it's all about upselling. So the POS itself, how you input the information is not slave to the speed of which you need to do it at. Whereas a full service restaurant needs your product, WISC, right? Back office, understanding all the preparation to the service. Whereas something like a QSR, not only does it need the back of house, which is what like WISC does, but also needs the front of house, which is how do I get as many orders during my window of opportunity, right? And so that's what we ended up building. And so that because we're so hyper niche focused, we ended up looking, not trying to go blanket cover and saying a POS is a POS and it works for any kind of business. Let's say, you know, a la Square, it's a POS for everybody. And then, okay, let's not talk about that. Let's go like talk about just restaurants. Say, well, all restaurants are the same. Well, no, they're not, right? They're completely not the same. Yeah. And so we ended up very hyper focusing on that vertical. And so that vertical, its sole purpose is top line revenue. How do I input as many orders as I can? And so because we were so focused only on that problem, when the consumer world dictated that Uber Eats, DoorDash, and Grubhub are the way that people order, even though restaurateurs hate it, we were the first ones to be able to speak to those companies and say, we can do direct two-way integrations with you. So like we don't, so there's no Deliverect, there's no Chowly with us, there's no Otters. We are directly connected to all of these platforms. We are directly connected to our own order ahead application. So because we're controlling the number of orders that can come into our system. So we're always thinking about that, right?
That's huge. That's huge. So, and just for context for, you know, people that might not know, I assume by also kind of not needing these third-party ordering systems, it's also probably A, more efficient, but B, there's probably a cost savings. I'm assuming there's a cost for these third-party aggregators, or I don't even know what they're called, but third-party ordering systems, or.
Yeah, well, for sure. I mean, look, let's put it into context, right? It's nice to, I'm not knocking on them. Kubos, Deliverect, Chowly, Checkmate, they're great systems. They're great systems when there's a certain threshold of how busy you get, right? But if you get to a certain level, past that certain level, there are fundamental flaws into that, because what you're doing is you're horizontally scaling your technology, and horizontally scaling your technology, there's multiple things. Well, let's first talk about you're paying an extra layer. So you're paying for a software that's an extra layer.
Right.
You are inherently during your rush, right? That's hence coin master your rush. Let's say it's a lunch rush. You have a 2-hour window to make 90% of your sales. Something goes wrong between Uber Eats, Grubhub, or DoorDash, the middleware, and your POS. Figure it out. You're on hold with how many different platforms, and now they're most likely blaming each other because that's just the nature of the beast. And your 2-hour rush is now done. You just lost a day of sales, and that's massively terrible for you, right? As a restaurateur, what you want when efficiency, when volume and efficiency are required to be hand to hand, direct. I just said it. Volume and efficiency. That's 2 layers. Why would I add a third? I want vertically integrated. I want to know that this technology that I'm leveraging to streamline my order flow, well, it's 2 layers. Like it's vertical, right? So because if there's a problem, I already know that the POS or Uber Eats knows that there's a problem. I don't need to now figure out where's the problem coming from. There's a problem. One of them's going to know what's going on, right? Whereas if you bring in that middleware layer, now there's so many more moving parts. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say that it's a great point. And I'm thinking like for the average, restaurant that, before they start using MYR, I'm envisioning the setup. Obviously, we deal with a lot of restaurants, so I've seen some of these and all these screens. But can you maybe paint the picture? So they got their POS. They might have multiple terminals. Then is it one separate screen per ordering device? So like Uber is separate. Like walk me through that, because I want our listeners to just imagine.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So if you want, actually, the best example to ever see is, look, I'm not qualifying their food. That's a personal taste, but I am qualifying the fact that they are the best at what they do. McDonald's is by far top of the line. These guys have always been there because they can afford to. I mean, that's fundamentally what it is. And if you go to a McDonald's, just go to a McDonald's and look, you will see all the tablets. You will see all the Uber Eats, the DoorDash tablets, the Skip tablets in Canada, Grubhub in the States. You'll see the Ritual tablet if they're somewhere in a cosmopolitan, like metropolitan area. Those tablets are there for a reason. Those tablets are there not to interact with. They're there to interact with when you have to. Example, when you need more time with the drivers via Uber, Uber Eats is Uber Eats. Uber is still Uber, separate company, separate piece of technology. There's a privacy issue. They don't allow the point of sale to just be able to hop over into Uber and start messing around with that. So you have the tablets when you need them. But the idea is, you're a QSR, you don't need those tablets because you're supposed to be able to make everything within 7 minutes or less. That's the dream, right? It's like, you know your menu. If you have too many SKUs, you have a problem, right? Figure out your SKUs, and that's what QSR is about. Be really good at very specific things and be able to output those things. Like if you're a chicken shawarma place and you run out of chicken, you got problems. Like, no, but it's true, right? Like, you need to know what the hell you're doing. Whereas WISC comes in, you know what you're doing. But the point is this. I make a change in my menu. I change the price. I up it by $1. I forget. I go on Uber Eats. I go on DoorDash, and I go on Uber Eats. I go on Grubhub, and I forget to go on DoorDash because maybe in my area there's less DoorDash. I forgot to make that change. And all of a sudden I get 5 orders. There's $1 difference. It's $5. Who's eating that? You are, as a restaurateur, right? So you need a place where you can just press it. So in MYR, you go into our admin panel. You set the price, you press synchronize across the board, it's done. Now, when an order comes in, it automatically comes into those tablets, and then they get resent into MYR, meaning I don't have to take the order and re-enter it. Now, let's talk about human error. Let's say on average, you have 300 orders a day if you're a really successful place.
Yeah.
And you have an employee or yourself punch in the order wrong. Who's eating that cost? So do the math. You just add it up. You say, okay, well, let's just say shrinkage, meaning human error shrinkage, 3 orders a week punched in wrong. I have to give something away for free. Do the math. Do that per week. Do that per whatever. And not only that, forget just the cost, monetary cost. Everybody, and this is what's funny, even myself, as a consumer, I order something off Uber Eats, it comes late. Even if it's raining and it's traffic jam, I'm blaming the restaurant, right? And so that review, and that review ends up damaging. It compounds. It's like, so what do I want? Your tech cannot necessarily solve for all human errors, but it could definitely minimize them.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's what it is. So something like MYR, you're able to make your menu changes yourself in your system. It'll publish it to all the applications. And when the order comes in, it automatically goes into MYR. There's no problems because now you're not relying on the human intervention of forgetting to do something or re-entering something wrong. Right.
And it makes a ton of sense. Like, obviously, you know a bit about WISC, but on the back end, it's this exact same thing when it comes to data entry. People manually entering their orders or manually entering their invoices from their supplier, and one comma missing, then your cost is off, your whole recipe is off. Like, it's such a trickle effect. Or just inventory counting, right? Like, did I count, like the amount of times, like one extra digit, you're typing in Excel throws everything off, and then you're just spending time wondering, is the data accurate? And that's what I tell people sometimes. Even if it was a 1-for-1, usually we save like 70% time, but even if it took the exact same amount of time, there's an argument to be made that on one side you can trust the data, on the other side you're always wondering, is this accurate? There's always that self-doubt of
100%. It's what I say. I dislike the term very much. Big data. I care about relevant data because garbage in, garbage out. So if you can at least minimize the garbage, quote unquote, that goes in, then you're guaranteeing that the garbage that's coming out is also the same garbage. It's not like, why is this different? Like, I have no idea. And then you can cause even more errors because now you have the human panic error and
compounding. It's
all compounding problems. It's 100%. It's like in our system, like, you know, give you an example, like if you look at full service point of sales, if people look at, well, say, well, why can't I use a full service POS for my QSR? Well, let's just look at historically what happened with McDonald's. I mean, McDonald's, I'm old enough, you're old enough to remember when they had the electronic cash registers. They had like 3 colors. There's white, blue, red, and yellow buttons. And then when McDonald's decided to go to POS, and they're sitting on NCR, and they have their own OS sitting on top of the hardware, but they looked at all the systems back there. I'm not talking about the iPad generation of, you know, Lightspeeds, Toasts, Touch Bistros, and all, which are less heavy metal than the systems like NCR, Micros, you know, and Maitre D. But what did McDonald's do at the time? They looked at those systems and they said, okay, well, these are POSs. Mm-hmm. But did they use them? No. They said they don't work for our workflow. So they rebuilt it from the ground up, thinking about their logic and their structure. So the idea is that, you know, well, I use an analogy I use this analogy all the time, but it does drive the point home. An X7, BMW, and a Range Rover, they're both equally same price cars, or pretty whatever. Which one are you going to take off road? Well, that's exactly it, because the Range Rover has been built from the ground up, engineering wise, only thinking about that. Now they're thinking about luxury and all that stuff, but it's easier to go from the bumpy roads down to the smooth sailing, easy stuff than it is to go from something that's smooth sailing and figure out how to make it so that it's going to go through the, you know, the trauma that the engine has to go through. And so it's the same principle as what a POS for QSR is, right? And so it's not evident when you don't have a certain threshold, right? And we know this, right? It's like we have that problem. Like SMBs will call. I'm sure you have the same problem. And SMB will call and say, well, and I'm going from a cash register to, what's the difference between you and Toast? And it doesn't matter what platform. It's irrelevant. And you say how many orders you make a day? I don't know, 20 orders. Well, it doesn't really matter. You can stick to your electronic cash register. No, but I want something cloud-based so that I could do it at home and calculate the stuff at home at the end of the day. Okay, well, that's cool. Yeah. And that's great. But where it really starts to make sense is that as soon as you get into a QSR that now starts thinking about multiplying multiple locations, end up franchising, etc., that's where we stand out. That's where we end up thinking about it, because when you deal with a full service restaurant, normally, unless you're already a chain like Houston's or Texas Grill or whatever, you're thinking about your one location and you want it to become a staple, right? You don't want it to just shut down after 25 years. We've seen those in Montreal many times, right? So you don't think about multi-location, you don't think about those problems. And so the POS that caters to that niche won't think about the pain points that'll happen afterwards. But when we started as QSR, all of a sudden our QSRs were calling and saying, hey, I have 5 locations now and I want to be able to manage it under one roof. I want one login. I want to have all real-time reporting. I want granular menu management. And we're like, well, yeah, obviously, because that's our bread and butter and that's our niche. So we started to build franchise panels and multi-location management and granular management, real-time reporting and all that stuff, because suddenly we were no longer having conversations just with the individual QSR location. Right. We were having simultaneous conversations with franchisor's head office. And so now we're solving pain points in 2 places at the same time. And that's what makes us become very sticky. Like much of what I've seen with WISC, now that you guys are touching QSR, you're realizing that there's a whole other world of problems. Yeah,
a whole other world. And honestly, even like we've been getting more into QSRs ever since we launched food, but just in general, even if we just look at groups or franchises, it's the same thing. It's like you said, it's solving that initial problem, but then once they're in 10 locations, 15 locations, they want to do the recipes once and push them across all locations, or they want to have the same inventory items so they can compare chicken from location A to location B. So same SKU. Right. So you start getting to the specific, and same thing, one login, and you'd be surprised. Some of our competitors, I didn't even know this until these groups came to us and they're like, I'm tired of logging in and out of my accounts. I'm like, what do you mean? You have 10 logins? Yeah. You have a login for, so things we kind of take for granted, because like you said, you built it from the ground up. That's right. You realize a lot of other companies have that technical debt where it's hard to change after you've been doing
100%. It's like, if I use the medical world as an example. It's like, there's a reason why the Apple Watch is not considered a medical device. And on their website, they'll say something like, we measure something like an ECG, because if they didn't have the word like, then they would have to become ISO 13485 certified, which means that they would have to go all the way back and rebuild. So it's not obvious. Like, a lot of people, I have that question all the time. Well, when I used to have a web studio, like, hey, how much to build Facebook? I'm like, or how long? I'm like, well, how long have they existed for? It's as long as they've been around, right? It's like, you can't just build it overnight. It's fascinating. It's hard because I think in tech, it's very difficult to, people that aren't in tech don't appreciate, like, they say, well, it's just a button. Well, it's like, well, it's not just a button. It's like, think about Google. Yeah, it's just a search bar. But everyone can appreciate the level of complexity behind that statement. It's like, if you want to build a house, you're like, all right, build a house, everyone. And I guarantee you that I only want bathrooms on the right side of the house. And then when they're like putting up the splash and they're already like mopping up the floors, and you're like, you know what? I want a bathroom on the left side of the house. Like, can you imagine what they would have to do? They have to dismantle everything, run pipes, and then rebuild. It's the same principle with code. It's just, you don't see it.
Yeah.
So it's hard to comprehend that, right?
Yeah.
And so, it's like, that's why dealing with what we're like fundamentally on, it's like, we're so focused on QSRs that when the landscape changes, which it is, and it's dictated based on 4 things: real estate prices are going up, food costs are going up, wage costs are going up, and the consumers are getting either more lazy or want it faster, cheaper, better.
Yeah.
Right? Which technology do you think is going to be able to adapt itself quicker or be more agile? The one that has been purpose-built for that mindset, or the one that's going to duct tape itself?
Right.
And then what happens when it duct tapes itself? You're going to send a rocket into space on duct tape, and then you're going to make it to the stratosphere, right? It's like, it's going to fall apart.
And to be clear, like WISC has technical debt. Everyone has technical debt, but it's how far ahead can you get? And I think with WISC, one thing I got to give credit to Chip, my co-founder and CTO.
I love Chip.
Is he always does think ahead and doing things now that we don't really need to do now, and we can be reinvesting it, but he's doing that investment now because he sees what's going to happen in a year or what's going to happen in 2 years from now. So it's getting ahead of it, where I think, the older school mentality was maybe like just clients, but then the tech becomes kind of obsolete, and it's very hard / impossible to build on top. It's almost like you got to restart from scratch, right?
Well, you either restart or you bind your people in with super heavy contracts or whatever it is,
right.
but times are changing, and people are, it's not to negate enterprise-based systems. There's a reason why they were there, but again, they were built in a time where the workflow allowed to build like that. Now, not to, the cloud, it's not even the cloud anymore. It's like, we used to have software as a service. Now you have websites as a service. Now you have hosting as a service.
Right.
Everything is as a service. Everything is like based on what you need when you need it, not based on, I got to be locked in onto this contract for 3 years and that's it. It's like, no, I need a loyalty program right now.
Right.
I don't like, why don't I have it? I need it right now.
Yeah.
Right. And so, and that's the reality. It's like, oh, well, you don't want it? Fantastic. Well, I got this POS that does it, that can just connect to another one. And, it's such a different world.
Yeah.
So, it's to say it's great for us because, and great for yourselves as well, because it's like, we're the new generation of thinking. I think that it's important to build and think about how you're going to expand, but it's also very difficult to know when not to just start coding, because it's super easy to just start coding. Let's just code it. But it's okay, you spend 3 months and then it's like you were working towards a trend, not an actual change, right? And look, we all saw it. The biggest example that I can think is Sunday and DoorDash during the pandemic. Oh my God, sales are so easy. No, because it's a trend. All of a sudden, it's well, everything reopened and everyone went back to eating at full service restaurants. So all of a sudden that just dropped. I don't want to have to scan a QR code to pay my bill. I want a server to come and, and say, hi, how was your meal? Like that's what it's about, right? It's not. And so it's very difficult you got to be very careful in what you do. And so, it's examples. It's like, we have franchises that would come to us and say, well, we need this. And we'd look at it and analyze and say, that doesn't sound right. It doesn't sound right. We don't see, give an anecdote. We had a loyalty program, not antiquated, but an old school loyalty program, a big one. Say, okay, we want to integrate with you guys. And they're like, we want to make sure, and they told the franchise, they're like, we want to be able to have people sign up via the app. And I'm like, great. And at the POS. I'm like, what do you mean at the POS? They're like, at the cash. I'm like, have you been to one of the locations? They're like, no. I'm like, they have lineups out the door. So they go, so? I said, okay. So I said, let's play it out. Hi, welcome to so-and-so brand.
Yeah.
Would you like to sign up for loyalty? What's loyalty? What do you mean, sir? What do you mean, what's loyalty? Just give me your name, phone number, and email, and we'll sign you up. Why do you want that information? And I say, do you want me to continue with the anecdotal, I got a lineup behind the door.
Exactly.
You want me to do that? Or do you want me to just say, scan this QR code, sign up, and come back later?
Yeah. Yeah,
that's
a no-brainer. It's
these are
funny.
The kind of things.
Yeah, it's true. It's when rubber hits the road. It's the parallel, I think, on the WISC side is sometimes people will say, oh yeah, but this other system does all these things. Or sometimes even, oh, but my POS does inventory. And it's like, look, there's a reason WISC exists and integrates with these POSs. And it's once you're in it and you're doing inventory, it's all the nuances that matter. It's like, oops, 100%. The app doesn't work offline and I'm in the basement or in a fridge, or like, oops, I'm 10 people doing it, or, oh, my phone died. Did I just lose all my data? So you kind of learn, like, as you're going, the real kind of things that you don't think about on paper, but when you're on the ground with those restaurateurs, you're like, oh man, that's I can't believe we didn't think of this or this. And you start kind of improving. And then years later, people are like, oh, this is great. Well, I can't take all the credit. It's great because of client feedback that we kept improving. And
well, exactly. And your feedback was very specific. You were able to tailor to that. That's why like, yeah, we have an inventory module in our system, but it's like, it's for like the mom and pop that's like, I can't afford the WISC. And it's like, we don't want to lose the business. But to franchises, it's like, they're like, we'll use your inventory. Just build it out more. And I'm like, so you want me to do what WISC did for the last 5 years? You want me to just build it for you in 3 months? Yeah, no problem. I got you. Like, no, it's better to have a bundled integration so that that the back of house is going to be so solid and looked at. It's like, I keep using the car analogies, but it's like, look, everybody, I don't know what happened, but it's like every single car company decided to just create like the middle line, the X3s and the X1s and X2s and the Mercedes. Meanwhile, you have Hyundai that's like, we're going to have our models, and then they come out with the Genesis and like, this rivals the Bentley, because they figured out their manufacturing process. They figured out how to be able to do one-offs when you place the order. They figured out the niche of what it is, what makes a car different. It's like, why is it that the Genesis can sell itself at 80,000, Canadian, which is 50,000 for whoever's listing on the States, but right? It's like, there's a reason, because they realize they're like, okay, luxury, if we can't figure out how to manufacture one-offs without the handmade stuff like Bentley, no one will ever be able to get there. And so it's going to be this discrepancy. You got all the other car companies like, how do we make it as cheap as possible? And then it's like, who cares? Yeah. They're a dime a dozen. And it's the same principle. It's like, which one are you going to take off road? And so it's like, yeah, it's the same principle with tech. And I think people don't necessarily understand tech or don't want to take the time to appreciate tech. It's not even understand. It's the time to appreciate what it takes to build proper tech. It's like, there's a reason why, like, even yourselves at WISC, you don't do scheduling at a granular level, because 7 Shifts is doing it super well. Right. And if you're a franchise, within the same city, within the same, let's say, downtown core, and you got 30 locations, and you have 250 employees, and they're cross-pollinating between stores, and you got scheduling and SMS. Well, do you know how much work that's going to take to build? 7 Shifts did it. So why not use them? Yeah. Because you can't always compare it. You can't just be like, well, so but it is difficult because budgets are an issue, right? And but I think that if companies like ourselves working with the franchises that we have can build proper like unit economics case studies, like properly show, like, you know, like just the example of like direct integration. Why would I care about direct integration with Uber Eats and all that? I got, you know, other ones, the middlewares. Okay, how many mistakes could happen? 3. What's your average ticket size? 20. All right, so this pays for itself, right? So it's difficult. It's not always easy to convey that message. I think that the SMBs are much more difficult to explain that to. Franchises are the new franchises, not the ones that are established with enterprise-based systems that have to like swap out equipment. That's not an easy task. Right? But the up and coming ones, those are the best ones to talk to, because, you know, if they're in the business of selling franchises, the way that they're going to sell franchises is the same way that we're going to show to them that our technologies helps them make more money and save money. Because that's fundamentally how they sell franchises. Sign up with us, not with them. Right.
That makes sense. And it's funny because I almost feel like on the restaurant side, there's kind of and I guess most businesses, but what I've seen is like generally restaurants, it's a lot easier to sell, you know, a revenue generating solution than a cost saving solution, right? It's I could tell someone I'll save you $5,000 a month. They're like, interesting. And then a promoter can come and say, I'll get you 20 clients a day. And they're like, I love it. I'm in. And it's funny how it kind of works. But I think the one shift that we've seen at least is, you know, post COVID era, at least, I still feel so weird saying that, but like after COVID, we did find that a lot of restaurants became more cost conscious and realized when they did have to close down or be at, you know, minimal capacity, they took those things more seriously. I mean, a lot did, but just a bigger percentage started seeing costs 100%. Of goods and seeing their ordering and supplier costs and recipe costing and inventory. All these things became more important. So that was one thing that actually we've seen shift. And I think now people are thinking more holistically and they're realizing, man, it's not just how do I make more top line, which is a part of it, but it's like, how do I increase those margins at, you know,
well, 100%, and not just that. I think that back of house, and I think that the most important thing is exactly that. It's like it's not just you want to have a system that gives you the best top line revenue and have like ours, or have a system like yours that's like, oh, it's going to help me figure out my costs. It's having companies like both of us be able to bundle ourselves together, and then, as you know, we discussed over time, like start to feed back the information from front to back to front, to start understanding what are the best choices to be made in order to maximize front to house and back house. Like, great, you're saving your costs on a dish that you're not even selling that much, right? Or you don't know how to promote it as much. So what's the point?
Right.
What's the point of doing that? When it, you know, like it's so funny to see franchises copy each other. It's so funny. Like we see it every day, but it's like, go back to basics. Like, you know, when there is a Michelin star, and by the way, this is true. Everyone could Google this if they want. There is a Michelin star food truck in Singapore. The meal is $2 Canadian, which is 10 cents US. Because they make one thing, and they Michelin star. How do you beat that? How do you beat that?
It's good for inventory. It's good for the sale.
You know what I mean? You need an iPhone 11 and a calculator, and you're good to go, right?
That's awesome.
But you know, it's like you got to. So, but knowing that, being able to have front end tools that can suggest based on sales frontline what you should try, being able to at the same time query your back end and say, is this really the item that I want to be the one pushing, even if I sell 10 of them more, what are my margins going to be at the end? Or if I made more margins on the Wagyu steak that I'm bringing in to make Wagyu burgers, but I'm only selling 2, right? But if you don't have the right systems that can tell you accurately the back of house and accurately the front of house that are working together, much like we are now, you're still going to have to figure out and have an Excel spreadsheet and be like, okay, what's happening here?
Yeah.
Right.
No, that's fair.
And so that's where the technology becomes interesting.
Yeah, no, I agree. And like, we've spoken about some of these things, but yeah, just futuristically, we think about predictive and maybe price elasticity and, having certain margins on certain dishes and based on the invoices being scanned, from suppliers on the WISC side, adjusting the price on the MYR side. So there's this whole kind of concept of just giving an experience that doesn't even exist yet, right?
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. I mean, we were talking about it. I can't wait to get into like, I hate buzzwords, but like true BI, because like, like what we have, like what you have as data is B to B, but like from the supplier. So B to B.
Yeah.
We have B to B to C, which is like, we know their customers and where they're going. Like eventually, then that's where we want to go as a company, is to be able, and I'm sure WISC as well, is like to say, you should raise your price by 25 cents on your lattes and you won't see a dip in sales at all. Right. And be able to suggest those kind of pieces of information. Yeah. And knowing that, based on the costs of certain goods, you should keep your price low. Don't raise it actually. Even though the back end milk went up, don't raise it, because all your other competitors or whatever, they raised it and now they're seeing drops. There's so much value to that.
Yeah, agreed. And I'd love to hear for like people listening, right? Maybe we have a lot of restaurateurs that listen. Can you walk through maybe some, case studies? You don't have to name the client, but just to kind of paint the picture. So a franchise is interested. They're like, okay, wow, this sounds awesome. A POS that can actually help for my, multi-venue setup. And it's, I need that speed. I need all these things. Cool. Number one, what does the onboarding look like? What does the setup look like? And then what are some kind of wins that you've seen with some of these clients to just share with our listeners?
Yeah. Well, it's simple. We number one is, what we do is we'll obviously understand what are we dealing with as a menu. So, what is a true QSR? Is it not QSR? Is it fast casual? Is it food truck? Whatever. We start to understand, we start to look at their current operations and see like, where can we, we'll do a site analysis and see where can we shave, not necessarily cost, but let's say time.
Yeah.
Example, you're a pizza house, and you only start making the meal after you get paid, but on a Friday you have 400 orders, right? So after you get paid, so from the moment you say that'll be $16.99, on average that could take up to a minute. Okay, well, why not send it like McDonald's does as soon as you confirm the order while the person's paying, it's already being started in the kitchen. Why would I do that? What if the person doesn't pay me and leaves? How many times does that happen a year? We'll pay for that, okay? Because the difference is that extra minute is 400 orders. Well, that's 400 minutes you just saved yourself for more orders. So we do a site analysis. We'll definitely start a pilot. So we'll do a pilot at least in 1 to 2 or 3 locations, so that not only does the one location understand the POS itself, but the franchisor is going to see what they can control granularly and the real-time savings of reporting and all of that. That's very important because, so give a context to that. One of our restaurateurs franchises Boustan. They're famous in Quebec. They're now expanding in Canada. They were literally making that when they had 35 locations with us, they would spend 5 hours a week. Their controller would spend 5 hours a week taking our reports, calculating royalties, and publishing invoices in their accounting softwares. They're now at 65 locations. So you can imagine how much time that would take them if we didn't build the automation of that.
Wow.
So just the savings of their accounting staff, the human errors that happened with that.
Yeah.
That was one thing. Just by being able to take out an iPad at any time when there's a lineup out the door, and we call it a rover. So it's like a cash where you can at least go line bust.
Okay.
And just take an iPad. So you don't have to call us. You just grab an iPad, download our app, enter your activation key, and you go in the lineup and you start taking orders down the line. And the barista is still making orders. So Dispatch Coffee saw an increase of 30%.
Wow. Right
off the bat, 30% of sales because past the door, every person behind that door was a look and leave syndrome. It's busy. I'm going to go. That happens twice. Person's never coming back. It's muscle memory. So those are the kind of things. The flow of not making mistakes on orders, the savings right there, the ability to spin up and control and control granularly pricing, increase sales. So I won't mention the name of the franchise, but it's a big burger chain. It crossed into Canada, came from the States. They chose us over NCR, which is a nice win for us. But because their locations are so dispersed in greater Canada, they're able to have very granular pricing. So at this location, it'll be 10 cents more than that one, et cetera. If they're all within the same city, obviously they can't do that because people are going to be like, what the hell, why? But they can't, but they can do it when it's dispersed, and they do it from their cell phone. They don't have to call us, figure it. They just add new rule, this price, this location, click, 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 save, done. This kind of reactivity, this kind of, so, and not just granular, let's say, if that's kind of stuff, the way it's set up. Okay, well, I have a street facing store. I need 2 caches, 1 kitchen. Download iPads and there you go. Configure it for that location. I have 1 food truck, no kitchen. Okay, click, I don't want my items that are punched on the cash relayed to a KDS at this location. I want to have a rover because I'm at a festival near the food truck and I want I want a guy to walk around and take orders around there. Perfect. That for that location, that's the configuration. You didn't call me, you didn't call our support, it's done. And so these things, they save time, they save money, they save precious abilities to adjust and figure out how to maximize square footage, which is what it's all about in QSR.
Yeah, big time. And what do you find is your sweet spot? I mean, I know it sounds like you guys are getting bigger and bigger groups. Are you finding a sweet spot right now in terms of number of locations, or pretty flexible on that side?
So we're pretty flexible. Like we go all the way up to, we have now one at 135, but anything from 4 to 20 is like a no-brainer for us.
Okay.
Anything above that, it'll usually already have an established system that we'll have to like work on and, not convince,
but analyze,
explain why they should switch to us and the work that it takes to do that, whether it's financing options, right? Because, you have 60 locations, you got to buy, 60 Epson printers. It's not cheap.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. It adds up, and that's just printers, right? Ain't talking about iPads and stuff, right? So there's that legwork, but recently, what's fascinating is that we did QSR, and now we're this close. Hopefully, we'll be able to put a press release soon, but we're this close to converting a massive retail franchise in Quebec that they put our QSRs to shame, the amount of volume that these guys transact. And so because we connected to a barcode scanner, which people say, well, why QSR? Well, we connected to a barcode scanner because a lot of people started selling wine during COVID and lockdowns, and coffee. And so they needed a scanner. So we did it. All of a sudden, because we have a franchise panel, we have granular control. We have very simple, intuitive POS. We have all the integrations that people would need on inventory back, whatever it is.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, this retail brand is like, we are QSR. We're like, what do you mean? They're like, we're quick service retail. We're like, oh, I get it. So you need something simple, stupid, fast, and easy to manipulate. Yes, perfect. And now we're,
Interesting.
So it's good because again, it's like the core. It's like, I always say horizontal versus vertical integration. Right. Apple is horizontal. They're trying to be vertical. They're iCloud and this and that. But technically, if someone made a better phone than the iPhone, someone made better AirPods than the AirPods, someone made a better laptop than the laptop, those would just disappear. So horizontally, you just start dropping. How do you destroy Google? You want to destroy the entire essence of search? The entire essence of vertically integrated information? I don't know. It's going to be hard to do, right?
Yeah.
And
fair enough. That's crazy. It's crazy when you think about that. And on the retail side, you find same types of POS competitors and stuff, or is it totally different when you look at retail versus, because I'm a lot more familiar on the restaurant side, right? I don't know.
Yeah, for sure. No, when I go into retail space, so what we've seen so far is that we'll be competing against anybody who's using like the blanket all kind of retail. So I'm not negating. By the way, I love Square. I think the company's phenomenal, but it's the Square POS is trying to be blanket across, like it's good for everybody, and that's fine. That's great because they're not even a POS; they're a payments company. That's what they are. It's like everyone thinks Clover is a POS. No, it's not. Clover is a payments company owned by First Data, owned by Fiserv, and the Clover is just a product. It's a necessary evil to get in the door. So, but that's a blanket all kind of system. So when we go now, we're seeing it when we go into retail and they're using kind of a blanket all system, we're starting to compete. We would never go into like a Hudson's Bay or a Saks. Like, no, it's like that's a whole other animal, and then we know our place as a company.
That makes sense. Cool. Right? And so let me ask you this, just to kind of wrap things up, I'd love to hear, number one, where do you see kind of MYR going in the future? It sounds like you guys are crushing it with franchises, growing, getting bigger and bigger groups, really tackling and helping them with those, hurdles and operational side. What's next for MYR?
I think it's a good question. I think ideally what we're trying to achieve as a company is to build a I don't want to sound cheap when I say this, but to build an enterprise like solution at a cloud-based price. Right? And it's like you don't need front facing to be heavy. You need back end to be heavy, like ERP integrations. And we're never, ever trying to be like, oh, we're going to go after Oracle and NetSuite. No, they're there for a reason, but we can tie into them. But you're front facing, you don't need heavy. You don't need heavy hardware. You don't need things that people need to be trained on for 3 days. You need easy, stupid, lightweight, simple, omni-channel, automated. And automation, when you look at true automation, it always looks like a ballet. It's always smooth because behind simplicity is a lot of complexity.
Agreed.
Right. And so if something looks simple but complicated, it's because it's really badly done. Yeah. And so and we know those systems. And not just in our softwares, in most softwares, enterprise-based platforms, because they didn't have the luxury that you and I have now, which is, we don't have to think about servers. We don't have to be like, well, we have to think a little bit about servers. We have to be like, all right, we need an office and we need cages and we need power. And it's like, no, we just go on AWS and click. And it's, it's like, it's a different beast. We can focus on very specific things. Yeah. And so I think that's where MYR is going, is that our goal is to be able to not beat out NCR, but I would love our company to be a contender. Be like, okay, are we going to go with this? Are we going to go with that? I'd love to sit at the table with those big companies and be like, we got there. Because we can't do what they do necessarily at the franchise level that they're doing, and OSs allowing other companies to plug in, but at least be an option for some of them that don't necessarily want to go all that way. I mean, I think that could be a nice place.
That's awesome. And I mean, we've been chit-chatting a bit, and one thing I'd love to kind of plug it here. One thing I'd love to see, so for, restaurateurs listening, franchises and groups, QSRs that can really benefit of, top of the line, front of house, what you heard here, right, in terms of operationally integrating with your ordering systems, making it easy to kind of master your rush. And then on the flip side, looking for that back house, David and I have been chatting. We're going to figure out a bundle for that type of clientele so they can really get something that's the best of both worlds. There's going to be kind of special bundle pricing for that. So right now, I think what we're going to do is we're going to figure out how to open it up to these franchises and really kind of do what you alluded to, David, which is some kind of case studies, understand their needs, how many locations, what are their pain points, and see how we can make it a really, really good bundle.
Agreed.
So it's a no-brainer for them.
Yeah, I mean, look, we got in it because we saw it, like you said at the very beginning, crowded space. It's a crowded space. Why the hell are we doing this? We're not kamikazes, because we definitely see that there's a need that's not being addressed, and we're doing it. And I think that's why thank you for having me, because WISC is, since the day I saw it, I was like, man, these guys get it. They get it. They get it where they're going, and that's also a great point. It's like, if you're going to go and venture into the technology sector, do you want to have a technology company that is continuously paying attention and continuously working on its tech stack, or the ones that say, this is all you need, don't worry about it? It's like, well, I don't. If this industry isn't evolving all the time, I do want a tech stack that's evolving all the time too.
Agreed. Amazing. Well, David, thank you for being here today. Once again, MYR CEO and founder, master your rush, and stay tuned for the bundle between WISC and MYR. We're going to do something real cool for franchises and groups out there.
Agreed. Thank you so much.
Feel free to check out WISC.ai for more resources and schedule a demo with one of our product specialists to see if it's a fit for you.